Margaret and Jenny, because they have played such a huge role. You will notice, Leah, that many people were not responding in our selection team.
Yeah.
But Margaret and Jenny has played a huge role in that selection. They watch almost every single one of those films selected.
Yeah.
And at the same time communicated. Margaret always wrote her review after watching every movie, which was so fantastic. Yeah, and Jenny wrote all the
Synopsis?
Synopsis, yes, that's right. So of course you can't do that as well without watching the movies. So the two work really tirelessly behind the scene to get us over the line. So I really would like to use the opportunity to say thank you very much to them.
You're welcome. It was great working with you, Marg.
And what an amazing job that you've done putting the film festival selections together. I was looking over the Wellington leg of the festival, and you got 13 films in there. I wanted to know if you could tell us a little bit about the two films that you've got selected for the opening tomorrow, and that is If Objects Could Speak, for a Kenyan-German film, and Abdurrahman Sissako, a filmmaker at the Opera, which is a French film. Are you able to tell me a little bit about those two films for our audience?
Yes, you want me to start? I mean,
either or. You or Margaret?
All three of us have seen the films.
We start and we will fill out the extra bits.
Okay, so for those two films, the main important thing at the moment, which is a very topical issue, are you there, Leah?
Yes.
Okay, the main important thing at the moment is about the African heritage which have been taken out of Africa. A lot of stolen African artifacts, which have a lot of cultural value, which have a lot of things within and has been taken out of Africa. So the first one, which is the Kenyan one, If Object Could Speak, what it is that in the cinema, a museum in Germany, there is a Kenyan object. All it is given to it is a number and a year it was taken from Kenya.
Yeah. 1903.
Which is 1903. But then what is it? Most people have forgotten it. Right. So therefore it's about finding the journey to find out what it is. And then the other one, Abdurrahman Sissoko, he's a very well-known filmmaker. He did the film Timbuktu. He did Bamako. He did as well, what's the name, Millennium. So all of those are very, very important films. And this one, it's an opera, but the opera is about the stealing of a Malian artifact called Boli, which is a Bambara thing. So therefore, that's what it is talking about. The taking that art out of context, out of the country, from the people, which is so important for their daily life, for the initiation, for the protection. For instance, I'm Bambara and it's my culture. If you steal anything and the village make an announcement that we are going to put it under the Boli's name, anyone who has taken this, if he doesn't return it, well, guess what? Anyone who knows whose Boli is will return it straight away. You do not need a policeman.
Yeah.
So things like that were totally stolen. And then what does it do? What do you do? So the community get totally lost. People keep doing things they shouldn't be doing. Obviously, not all of those are in the film, but I'm just giving you the background of what a Boli is. And stealing an artifact like that from the country, from the culture, and what it does to the society and to the people. So that's why it's very important.
How is a Boli used?
Wow, you have to be initiated to be able to answer that. To be honest, it's like a protection for everything.
Is it like a taonga?
Ah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure what is a taonga, but it is.
It's a sacred object that has a treasure and a depth of meaning within a culture.
Okay.
And I think the interesting thing about the film is that until that is artifact, whatever has been taken, the mana of the community does not return. So I think the importance of retracing, finding meaning, people identifying, learning about what it is, even within their own culture, is an important part of that film, those two films, but also the closing film, Dakar to Djibouti.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is an amazing story of over a 2-year period with 4 ethnographers. And the 4 ethnographers go from Dakar to Djibouti, taking, documenting, questioning themselves, and returning all these artifacts, 20, I think something like over 12,000 over 2 years, to Paris for the Paris exhibition, and it establishes the Museum of Mankind. And that still exists. Now, some of them are properly documented, but many of them need to be returned. So there's sacredness around the return of the mana, and decolonization is an important part of all of these films.
And I think one of the main things about the film about Abdurrahman Sissoko is that he actually wants to bring Africa back into its light. So he's saying after the destruction of the spirit from colonization and the appropriation of the cultural objects, he wants to bring Africa back into its soul and itself and its light. And so that's the aim of the opera. But it's a very uplifting opera.
Mm.
Yeah.
We don't actually see the whole opera. We see the rehearsals of the opera, which is even more fascinating.
But one of the amazing things was that there were 48 artists, a Pan-African performance. He'd never seen an opera, but he communicated with the French, a French theatre group that wanted him to create this, work with them to create this opera. He'd never seen an opera, but he created one. He was sitting in the deserts in Mali. And
in Mauritania.
Yeah, and eventually he came and met them all, and they collaborated to produce this opera. What an amazing, really uplifting and thrilling project. Yeah.
And the lineup of stars of dancers, musicians, storytellers is incredible. And he cooperates
inside the opera
with Damon Albarn, who's a big Western rock star.
Right, and this is the lineup that's part of the opera as well.
Yes.
Yeah, all of those are the actors in the film that are across the continent, from many parts of the world, really, not just Africa, but yeah.
So these two films will be the start of the film festival, which starts tomorrow night and runs until the 30th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that both of those movies had something to do with things being removed from Africa and from different countries in Africa, and then the need and the desire to bring them back to Africa to restore mana, as you said. Did you pick them deliberately because they both had sort of a similar story?
Yeah, well, that's what we did. Okay, that was exactly because they are giving the similar idea. It is about the return and the stealing of African artifacts. So this year it is a very important, that idea is very important in the festival. We got another one, that a chronicle of the Afrocologist, which is not in Wellington. But that is very important in that line as well. So that cultural stuff is very, very important. It's at the moment we are fighting to be able to get those things back to the continent. And I mean, last year the French made a lot of noise because they returned 16 artifacts from to Benin.
Yeah.
Benin is well known for the bronze. Benin is the source of voodoo and everything. They have more than 1,000 artifacts stolen there. They returned 16 and they made it a political drama all around the world. While we have, I don't know, no one knows the number. And in addition to that, including New Zealand, which had that, you have even people's head taken to museum. I mean, in African term, it just does not make any sense to do that to people. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So it's time that those be returned and this sort of thing be stopped. Really, I know it's take a while, a lot of noise, but if we can make a little contribution for people to understand that this actually should not be and should be returned to the people, then I think that that will be, even if our action return 1 or 2, that would be fantastic. Yeah.
So I know under the German colonization of East Africa, they took a lot of artifacts back to Germany, and one of the movies, the Kenyan movie, doesn't the stuff end up in Germany as well?
They only took a copy of it. They didn't remove the thing itself. They took a digital copy and work through that. They did not remove it yet because they didn't. You can't tell who to return to yet until you work through you find the right people. Yeah. So that's what it is. Okay.
Well, I want to go back to just talking about the African Film Festival New Zealand itself, and what it means to you as an individual. You know, like what are the drives that get you up every day to work on this project throughout the year to bring a festival together? It's a big question.
It's a huge question, which I think that both Jenny and Marg are really well placed to be able to answer that question, because they got children who are half Africans, and they understand the challenges that the children got and we ourselves got in terms of our mental health, to be able to be stable while every day you are regarded as a foreigner. Not only that, but there are a lot of, you sit there and then you look at a lot of how can I say, wrong things saying, which are not correct. I'm not sure what is the right word for that. Media giving a lot of things which do not make sense. Consider misinformation, a lot of misinformation, a lot of fake news. So you sit there and you look at that daily, you say, come on, I can correct that. Or I know that's not correct. Or I can put a film which will give the right information about that particular area. Then you get children as well proud of themselves, because myself, I've grown up in Mali. I know a lot of it. I go back and forth, so I understand. But my own children, they believe more of the media sometimes than they will believe me, because the media so much repeats a lot of the things that at the end of the day, you even struggle for your kids to understand what you're talking about. Well,
I grew up here with my father being Tanzanian and my mother being Kiwi, so I understand perfectly what these kids are going through. And I know when I first went to Tanzania, I actually when I first arrived in Zimbabwe, because I've traveled through South Africa, Zimbabwe and Tanzania, I was actually taken aback at how much lies we're told in New Zealand about how people live every day. You know what I mean? Like, you hear the tropes and you hear the stereotypes all the time. And you go to the local, you know, I was living in the provinces. I was living in Taranaki. You go to the local libraries and they don't even have information other than the flora and the fauna and the safaris. And well, that's all they had at our library when I was in Taranaki in 95. And then you don't want to know about that. Everybody goes on the safaris. Everybody goes on goes to the tourist traps. You want to know how everyday people are living their lives. And then you get to Africa and it's like, wow, they just live it just the same as we do. You know, there's no difference. You know what I mean? And I was actually really surprised in Zimbabwe how closely it resembled Perth, which I'd flown out of. You know, it's like Australia had just broken off from that side of Africa, and all the flora, the soil was the same, the flora was the same. The only difference was they didn't have the same animals, of course, that Australia had. But yeah, the resemblance of the two countries. So what are the things that drive you, Margaret, to stay involved, and you, Jenny, to stay involved? Because as Coulibaly said, you have children that are of African and New Zealand heritage. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I have a grandmother born in South Africa, and I have a husband who's from Eritrea, and I've worked 2 years in Tanzania. So kind of my heart and my soul, part of it's actually in Africa. You know, when I arrived on Tanzanian soil, I felt like I was coming home. Yeah. And my children, as reinforcing what Coulibaly said, the films that wake me up every morning, great. Oh, I've got another film to watch, 1 or 2, and then I get my day started, and I've reviewed it and I've sent it off and feeling really good. Keeps me enjoying that film for the day, or critiquing it or something. But however, I share that conversation with my children, and they haven't seen the films, but it opens up a lot of opportunity for discussion. I want them to be able to hear the stories told by Africans about Africa. I want them to understand what they know and experience of racism and colonization from both sides. Yeah. So these films, there's always elements of these truths told through the films. And whenever I go anywhere to any culture, I'll always look out for an English version, an English translation, meaning of a film or a book or something that will get me feeling the soul of artists who have been able to communicate and express a very common sense of humanity. And that's what I love about film, and I love about literature. And hopefully I can share that and be part of a process that encourages people also to participate and supporting the wonderful work that Jenny and Coulibaly, as great friends of mine and ours, have initiated. And so I'm feeling really privileged of being able to participate in that and share it with my friends.
Yeah, well, what motivates me actually is that I've been to Mali a couple of times. I haven't lived there for a long time or anything, but I'm so proud of the Malian culture, and it has so much to teach New Zealand culture, and people don't know. I mean, it was like actually going to finishing school in Mali. People are so sophisticated in the way that they relate to one another and maintain peaceful relationships and allow people to express themselves without causing strife, or they've got a tremendous kind of social brilliance that this is just one example that we need to be taught that New Zealand would benefit hugely from it. And so I just think if people can see in these films actually the brilliance of these African cultures, then that will be just one little step, and that will also be something that our children can be proud of too, that they are also that they are New Zealanders, and they're also this.
Yes. Coulibaly, I wanted to ask you, when it comes to genre choosing for the film festival, is your interest when it comes to the genres more about telling the story, or about the people who are creating the story? The way I was thinking around this question was, some African filmmakers might be interested in science fiction, fantasy, or action movies. Is that sort of the focus? I know you've got one horror movie in there, But do you actually look at different shots? Yeah, I had a look at the short of that.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Which one are you? Which one are you talking about?
And I was like, oh wow, there's a horror movie, you know, like
The loom.
yeah. So like because when I go to the movies, I'm a big science fiction fan. I love fantasy. I love action movies.
Right. Well, you like Saloon.
Right.
Unfortunately, not in Wellington. You will fly to Auckland.
But I was wondering, do you get many movies about futurescaping Africa, looking into the future at the possibilities of what Africa could be?
I think that's a film I so much wanted us to make sure that was in Wellington and we couldn't fit in. That was the Acrophologist Chronicle of the Africologist I was talking about, which is throughout the entire continent from Cape Verde, but done in that futuristic way. And it's a brilliant movie that youth will love a lot. But when it comes down to a personal choice for me, which I love that one, I loved it because it have a lot of meaning in it. But the whole thing for African cinema is that we have a lot of real story which are not yet told. You see what I mean? So we are catching that with our actually real stories, getting into science fiction. Every science fiction we try to tell come from our background, and that ends up being like a real one. So that is a reason, a part of it. And at the same time, the type of genre, film classification in terms of genre is quite blurry when it comes down to African cinema, as far as I'm concerned, because we say we do everything in one. You see what I mean? You more or less do everything in one. It's not that you just concentrate in one type of genre for the entire film. Some people do it, but I felt that even that we still feel serious trying to tell a story, trying to give a lesson.
I suppose there is a point though when we've watched the movies as they've come out, and it's a whole potpourri of ideas and genres, and then probably at the very final stages, have we got comedy? Are there musical films about music? Have we missed something here? You know, we ask these questions, don't we? Sometimes, like for example, I would have loved to have seen a film, Namibia Number 9, and it was like the African equivalent of Bend It Like Beckham, but more as a documentary about storytelling.
It's a documentary.
It is a young soccer player from Namibia. Now, that would just be a real hit because, in fact, it's a very contemporary. So for that reason, I would have loved to have seen it in, but other priorities happen, you know, other things take their course. But because you can't put everything in, and you watch, you know, 33, 34, 35, 40 movies. How do you select? Oh, it's hard. I suppose North, South, East, West Africa. For example, the Nigerian movies are a challenge to me because a lot of them are Nollywood. For me, it is a challenge for me to compare those with high drama or philosophical analysis of the future of Africa, or you know, the intellectual property and who's right. You know, is it to take the manner of a person, and colonization, decolonization, these deeper topics appeal to me. So I probably put a lot of emphasis on those when I'm reviewing them.
Right.
But for other people, you know, they would love to see these lighter stories.
No, also, I think a few years ago we had a friend from Senegal called Faman Diaye, and she's very interested in film herself, and she's actually learning to become a filmmaker. But she taught me just by the huge diverse selection that she chose, which weren't necessarily, you know, all the things that she wanted herself, but she was kind of trying to read a New Zealand audience that would be informed but also entertained in a way that is quite diverse. And so I got some ideas from her about that, and I really pushed for the horror movie for that reason.
That's great, because I think I think it's great to have some of those other more fantastical things in there. I'm actually waiting for the African creator of movies, I don't know who they are, that's going to put all the old gods before Christianity and Islam in a room fighting over colonialism of Africa and how they would have sorted things out differently. I'm waiting for that movie to happen. Because I've sort of seen a little bit on a series that was on Prime or Netflix for a period of time called American Gods, and it was gods from all over the world that had been transplanted to America and how they were still fighting with each other. And I just think old gods prior to Islam and prior to Christianity and Judaism and all of that, I would like to see a film made about all the old gods, looking at what's going on now in Africa and just seeing what they'd say and how things would have been done differently if they still had a lot of the power and people that believed in them, you know. So, you know, if you know a film director that can think along those lines, could you give my idea pitch?
but Leah, they are putting it, but they are not just putting it as God, like the Boli. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That is a spirit, a situation which is nothing to do with Christian or Judaism God. So they're actually, those artifacts that are talking about represented our gods, our things, because we believed in matter. You see what I mean? So most people did in many of those areas. So and saying that Africa was one is, you can't say that. We are talking about 54 countries,
exactly,
thousands of cultures and a belief system, and
probably thousands and thousands of gods.
Yeah, but even if you just take the Dogon, the Dogons, I mean, they're counting 100 years is 70 years.
Yeah,
they have a lot of spirituality, and there are many societies like that. But at the same time, Jenny wanted to particularly talk about a film called Lengi, The Sacred Bond.
Yes.
From Chad, for instance, the relationship between people, what keeps the relationship between people, maintaining that. And that film is teaching a lot of lesson on that in the middle of difficult scenarios.
And it sort of goes back to what I was saying about the social brilliance of these cultures. That in Chad there's an idea and a word for it called lingi, which means compassion and solidarity, and that it's seen as the glue. And if you don't have lingi, then you're vulnerable to have strife. So there's this awareness of social relations, which is governed by, you know, an idea that's the consensus of everyone.
But that's also being challenged, isn't it? The custom and the religion, and where does that lingui sit? What are the boundaries of lingui? You know, and that's an ever-changing concept, you know, in all cultures, isn't it? And so the films, that one and Flatland, about patriarchal violence and the role of gender roles changing, and, you know, a woman not wanting her child to be circumcised and wanting her to be able to control her own fertility and things like this. These are all challenges to custom and religion, differently from the gods as such, but it is a challenge to the godly, you know, traditions. And so these are themes that come through a lot of the movies, those that are deep and meaningful and, you know, and challenging. That challenge to the custom, religion, social structures is told through the lives of you know, women, because the women in a gendered societies, and some matrilineal and some patrilineal, but some patriarchal, some matriarchal, but they definitely, those challenges are revealed in the films, and a number of films. And I'm thinking of Lingui, Sacred Bond, and I'm thinking of Flatland. What's another one? Is it not the Gravedigger's Wife? But those in particular.
Well, I think in Lingi particularly, it's a celebration of the concept, because that's what pulls everyone through.
That's
so
right.
It's an appeal to maintain that solidarity and compassion.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other theme that's coming through a few of the movies, and I'm thinking of The Citizen, and is biracial relations. I don't know if that's the appropriate term, but anyway, it's maybe an African moving into a Western culture, and trying to integrate or get immigration status, get citizenship, be acknowledged, and the relationship with other people around that person. There's a couple of films what I'm thinking about. The Citizen, and also the other one about the German, is it a German family? German and Ghanaian. What's the name of that one, Jenny?
Beyond the Intersection.
Beyond the Intersection. Yes. So that's an interesting one which I haven't completed the watching of it because it wasn't translated into English, but I watched it without the translation. And I kind of really felt strongly that I understood what was going on in the relationships, because the children were reflecting on their parents' relationship between a German and a Ghanaian in Germany, and how they felt about themselves, their parents' relationships, the struggles, and how they had come to terms or were still struggling with their identity because of that relationship. That's another interesting film.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
That's the Beyond the Intersection, right?
That's Beyond the Intersection.
And that's Germany and Ghana?
Yeah, Germany, Ghana. It's a couple one from Ghana, one from Germany. Yeah. And the kids are some in Ghana, some in Germany, some in USA, some in Britain. So it's a really interesting dynamic of people, of us all here having such of a relationship around our children's and everything. So I believe that most people will really rely on that. Well, most people in those sort of situations will rely on that. And that's very complex. Yeah.
Well, you've got 13 movies for the Wellington leg. I'm just going to read out a few and wondering if you can give us a little bit about it. So we've already spoken about Abdurrahman Sisseko, a filmmaker at the opera, and If Objects Could Speak. Under the Fig Trees, a Tunisian movie.
Oh, that's
Would you like to say anything about that?
I think I should leave these two ladies to talk about that. These two women to talk about that.
I love that movie because it's actually set just under the fig trees with fig pickers reflecting on their life, their relationships, their love, and the older women at lunchtime reflecting back with the young ones and trying to give them a bit of wisdom or reflecting back on their own lives. It's a very self-reflective, humorous,
and very sensuous. It's very sensuous.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful summertime kind of movie.
Yeah. Yes, and it's so slow moving, but it captures a lot, and it's got that youthfulness, joyousness.
Yeah, it's got
some of the older pick it up, but in the midst of all of that, you've got this exploitative, potentially harassing person, trying to gain the labor of the women. And
there's always one, isn't there?
There's always one.
There's always one.
Trying to boss, trying to.
But it's also a sisterhood without them kind of going rah rah.
He can be beautiful. That's right.
Beautiful sisterhood. That's sort of just a natural thing that's happening as well.
That's right. That's a lovely film.
Yeah.
Okay, the next one is The Grave Digger's Wife from Somalia. I thought this looked like an interesting movie.
Yeah. That one is just, to me, is an ultimate love.
Yeah.
It is just, to me, it's difficult to watch for me, in a sense that you got a lot of heart in it. But it's such a beautiful movie. It won the best prize in FESPACO, Pan-African Film Festival. The past one, I think, was in 2019 or 2020. He won the golden prize for that, and he won quite a few prizes. It's just a beautiful movie. But in terms of, can you imagine someone who dig graves to live, and then his wife is sick, and trying to look after her? It's Yeah.
And the cost of being able to solve the issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it's just ultimate love. It's just ultimate love to me.
And the wife tries to lift the pain of the husband, doesn't she? She tries to, her own pain, she tries to subdue that in a way to lift the pain off the husband, which she knew his love weighed him down because of her ill health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the son as well. The son trying to help and everything. Yeah. So everyone just try their best in the difficult situation.
Yeah, wonderful humanity.
Yeah.
Okay. And another one on show this weekend is Flatland from South Africa. What can you tell me about that?
Oh, Jenny, I want Jenny and Mark to talk about Flatland a lot more.
Oh yes. That's an interesting relationship with a man and a young girl. She's compromised and decides to marry him, not happily, but her love is her horse, and her horse and a relationship with somebody that's very different from her, who's a pregnant woman and very not kind of coarse, savvy, streetwise, and their relationship protects their friendship.
But during the course of this kind of wild ride that they're on, because they're basically on the run, there's all this kind of the afterlife of apartheid is being revealed through this kind of daily racism in this very kind of poor area of South Africa, and the cracks come into her relationship with her supposed best friend too, because they've been brought up together because her mother was the nanny for the white girl. And so that starts to crack apart during the course of the thing. So then it starts to get really interesting, because you're seeing all these different things that are coming up, welling up about, actually what has South Africa inherited now. And I mean, the director's whole idea was, let's look at this, let's face the pain, and then we've got something that we can start to try and heal.
But what's about the policewoman?
Oh, yeah.
And the detective? That is actually amazing things in it, because the policewoman, the policeman, the detective, all in that middle, all of them got their problem. And then you got the policewoman's partner as well in jail, and sort of framed to be in jail, even though he was supposed to be released. It's just all complex, and every step of that movie tell you something about the racial issue in South Africa.
Yeah, the apartheid regime and its impacts.
That's what I love particularly about that director, Jenas. Every movie I have seen of her is like that. She's so good at sort of
revealing,
on dealing with the racial issues of South Africa in a really interesting way.
Yeah, through the friendship of those two girls. Yeah, it was interesting. There is The Murder in Paris, which is also reveals, but as a documentary, the apartheid. There's a woman in exile, an ANC exile woman tracked down in Paris. That exposes the extent of the collaboration of the the French and the South Africans, and I think maybe even the English, reinforcing the apartheid and not protecting the ANC exile, but also questioning the ANC practice also. That was an interesting film when South African French film as well.
Flatland synopsis kind of gave me the impression it was like the South African Thelma and Louise.
Yes, you're right. It's so true, but with a new, different generation. Yeah, absolutely. That's Tyler's story. Yeah.
That sounds like something I might be interested in going and seeing. The Dakar Djibouti mission, Spoils of Mankind, and a French movie.
That was the one I referred to about the ethnologists traveling across over 2 years to take artifacts and create the Paris Museum of Mankind. So that links with the other discussion. The ones that we haven't talked about are the movies, the musical
Rumba Kings
movies.
is from Congo, and Tonton Manu is from Cameroon. Is that correct?
That's one. Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about those two.
I think Maggie, as music
You
lover,
keep passing it on to Margaret.
Oh, your genre. This is your genre, but everybody loves the musical films because they tell a story in context of a historic culture, but also, you know, the creative spirit, and we often learn that you know, the roots of so much music that we hear has been African inspired, and the origins are from Africa. So that's what you learn about both of those films. I'll leave you to the Rumba Kings, and I'll take on the Tonto. Because what I loved about the film is often there's a political bent in the music, and they're often challenged or loved because they are able to express you know, a humanity and a common cultural experience, or kind of break the divides that politically. But Tonton was not political. He didn't perceive himself to be political. He was challenged on that front. But he said, I sing in a language that crosses 80 cultures.
Wow.
It's French, but it actually is, it transcends and expresses and is able to transcend the diversity and the humanity experienced in all those different cultures. I love that piece of that film. I think that for me was the plot, you know, that even though he expressed his music and he was primarily in France, his return, as often the case, the return to their roots is always an important part of their soul. It's like to have another language, whether it's music or literature or English, you know, whatever language, is to have another soul, and you sense the souls across cultures in these musical films, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful because Manu Dibango, I mean, as a young man, his music was just amazing for us. Since I was a teenager, he just has been around for a long time. Max, it just couldn't be expressed better than it is. And then the Congo, the Rumba Kings are about the early people how the Rumba started. It doesn't go down to the
Rumba music is so popular in Tanzania.
Yeah, well,
you hear it in all the dalas, all the public transport vehicles.
Yeah,
they just play it constantly everywhere you go. That's all you hear.
Well, this is from the beginning, the people who started it. I just, again, really was my childhood because it's the 1960s that are talking about. And the radios, how the radios were amazingly, literally, the radios, we didn't sleep. You went from radio station to radio station. This is closing now, shortwave. This is closing now. We go to this one. Oh, that got to be. In fact, we used to organize dance parties based on radios. It was just unbelievable. So the rumors, I think, they are self-explanatory, but Jenny, want to say something about them?
No,
you don't. It's just self-explanatory. Having shown one Ruba movie before, some people will say, oh, do you need this? It's so different because the difference here is that these are people right at the beginning, how it started, how it developed. It doesn't even go into our current one. It stopped at that 1960s to the beginning of 70s.
Actually, that one won the best music documentary at Cannes.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
It's won a few awards, actually.
It's just amazing, and at the same time, it was so important for the independence of African countries. For instance, the song they sang in Belgium about the independence of Congo has been the hymn of independence of almost every African country. Independent cha-cha. I mean, that music has been just amazingly played everywhere.
Can you sing
it? No, baby Leah can sing it. Independent cha-cha. You find it.
And lastly, You've got a couple of movies which we haven't spoken about yet. So I guess this was something for the greenies. You got the Wildlife Warriors from Kenya.
Yeah, well, I find those movies just very, very important. If you see, how can I say, a wildlife movie from a Western point of view, and you see this one, you will tell the huge difference. The Westerners show wildlife movie like if there is no African on that continent, only the animal they care about. These movies not only talk about the people, the animal, how they live together, what are the impact of one of them on each other, and how do you work on it? So that is very important. But if you take, for instance, the planting of a coral forest, these are people who decided that actually they want to do something about the coral issues. So it's not a big company, it's just a community. That's why you call wildlife warriors, because it's just a group of people deciding.
Not a big corporation behind them or anything like that.
Nothing like that. This is just a common people planting a coral forest. It's just amazing to bring the wildlife, the sea life in it. And then another one is the wildness in the city. I mean, this is the reserve coming right to what's the name? The capital of Kenya.
To Nairobi, right to the doors of Nairobi.
Right down to the door from Nairobi. How do they live together? And you got people here giving their land for the animals. It's just unbelievable how they work together, how these people are really conscious of it. It is their animals after all.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? It is their.
They want to retain the pathway for the group of animals to interact and not to break it by a city, but in order to be able to retain that opportunity for them to be wildlifers and be able to move and live together, they want to ensure that the barriers aren't created to stop that. And, you know, these people movements, I've always remembered this saying, gosh, like you know, the innovations of today will become the institutions of tomorrow. And both those films are about innovation and people's movements for change. They're change makers.
Okay. And the last movie for the Wellington leg is Toshret from Egypt. And it's, Can you tell us a little bit about that one, just to finish up?
That's a short movie. If you take Judaism, Christianity, or Islam, we are all talking about the Sinai Mountains.
Right.
This is about the beauty of the Sinai Mountain. Very mountainous, desertic, but extremely beautiful. So it's one of those documentaries which just, I personally believe that area is so important for so many people. But like myself, I can only imagine it in the script, saying that the mountain was like this, the difficulty was like crossing it like this, like that. But looking at it in the movie and say, oh, okay, I can imagine how those early people crossed that land and all the difficulties that I'm talking about.
Are you saying that that region was significant to all those three religions? Is that what you meant?
That's what I mean. But at the same time, it's really, I find it amazingly beautiful. I'm not a desert person, but when I look at it, you open my eyes so much.
I think also the Arabic-African relationship, you know, is often not clear. I remember, I'd hate to say this, but once somebody said to me, they want to apply for a scholarship, and they said, we're from Egypt. And I said, well, you won't be able. Oh my goodness, I had to stop myself. Egypt's part of Africa. And I think we sometimes lose that. I mean, and when I went to Africa, I realized the whole Arabic influence and trade, particularly across the East Africa, so strong and so significant. And so you know, particularly the Islamic religion too, is connected. And, you know, to see the films and to see the geography and to have to challenge yourself to think of it as part of Africa, You know, we often don't do that. Well, I'm saying I was challenged by that.
Yeah, with Swahili culture, it's integrated so many different cultures into it.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
It's very, very.
Okay.
We're going to wrap up anyway because we're coming up to the end of our hour. I'd just like to thank Boubacar, Margaret and Jenny for coming on and telling us about the film festival, which starting tomorrow at the embassy. Now, I just want to make sure the celebration and talks and thank yous and refreshments will be at 6:15.
Yes, I think 6. I think it's not on the program. Yeah, but
6:15. You see, I thought that the 6 was a 4, but I got my new glasses yesterday, so I know it's 6 now. So I just want to double check that. Yeah, so 6:15 is the opening ceremony, if you like to call it that, and then the first movies come on at tomorrow night at 8:30.
Well, after the celebration, we go into the movie.
Straight into the movie. Yeah, okay, and so I think
it's the fact the event starts, and then Coulibaly should tell us what time the movie is actually starting, because when I've been there in the past, we go from opening night at 6:15. You're right, actually. Yeah. I've been 6 refreshments, welcome speeches, and then go on into the movie. But I think it's those probably start around about 7 o'clock, I'd say. Jenny, Coulibaly, what time is the movie actually starting tomorrow?
Well, the movie generally we started on 7. The speech started on 7.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we do that. Can I just throw in something, please?
Yes.
Can Mag, you say something tomorrow? I would love you to make a speech, Mag.
Margaret. What is with Coulibaly throwing people in the hot seat at the last minute?
I don't have any trouble speaking. It's just that whether or not there's other people that would maybe, I don't mind being a filler somewhere if I need to, and I'll fill up the gap. I'm happy to do that. I can do that quite spontaneously. But thank you for the offer.
And it's been recorded now.
If you've got ambassadors and other people like the councillor and others that you'd like to do that welcome, then you go ahead. I'll be part of the clan.
No, as part of the team, Mag, your point is so important, and that's to me, it's very, very important. If you can, that would be great.
Okay, I'll think of a few maxims that I can throw in there. Then, thank you.
Okay.
So that's tomorrow night, 6:15 at the Embassy Theatre on Kent Terrace in Wellington. Please come out and, to all our watchers, please come out and have a look, join in the fun. And I'd like to thank and music.
Yeah, and in this group, yeah.
Yep. And I'd like to thank you all, Boubacar, Jenny, and Margaret, for coming on the Blackhouse. This is the Blackhouse on the internet, not on the radio this week. We're on the internet, Blackhouse Online, and we'll catch you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.